God is the same yesterday as He is today. The Bible is a story of precept upon precept. It's a story of man's relationship with God and how his relationship with government interferes with that relationship with God. Our relationship with God is often part of our relationship with our fellow man. That's how we relate to God, is how we relate to one another. We forgive so that we may be forgiven. We give so that we may be given unto. It is that character expressed by the prophets that brings us closer to God. Men like Cain went out of the presence of God and created a city-state. Nimrod did the same thing. He was a mighty provider instead of the Lord. He brought men into bondage by offering them a system of welfare and social security that brought them into bondage, that brought them into subjection, that brought them so that the will of Nimrod came before the will of God. Today we do the same thing. Many Christians tell me, we must obey the government until it asks us to do something contrary to God. But the commandments say, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. Anything that is thy neighbor's, not just steal them, you're not to even covet them. But yet when you apply to benefactors who exercise authority one over the other, you do just that. You give them power to take from your neighbor for your welfare. And what should have been for your welfare has become a snare. You have gone into the bondage of Babylon. You have done this through praying to these men who call themselves benefactors but exercise authority. You have not been baptized by John the Baptist, who said, you live because if you have two coats, you share with those who have none. You've been baptized by Herod, who says, if you don't have a coat, I'll take one from your neighbor and I will give it to you. These are completely different concepts. One way is contrary to the ways of God. The other one conforms to Christ. The idea of one purse, the socialism, democratic socialism is maybe the worst, because each man takes part in the sin of stealing from his brother through an agreement. It's not really stealing again, it's coveting your neighbor's goods. We have to turn around from that. The golden calves, the central banks, the unrighteous mammon that are created by the institutions that we create with our own hands that become the gods of our lives, the ruling judges of our lives. Jesus' kingdom was not of the world of Pontius Pilate. It was not of his constitutional order or system of government, because Rome was no longer that libera res publica, where men were free from things public. It was an empire where men were subject, enfranchised. Their rights now came from the privileges granted to them by government and not from God. It was going to get worse, but it was bad enough that Christ came just at the right time. The world went into a terrible inflation because they took all the silver out of the coin and they had unjust weights and measures. They gave more and more power to their leaders who were no longer titular but lawmakers. They were able to take the sons and daughters of the people, the first fruits of the people. They became the gods of the people, the ruling judges of the people, determining not only right and wrong for themselves, but right and wrong for everyone else. It is God who determines what is right and wrong, and He speaks to us in our hearts, and He gives us the prophets, and supposedly He gives us the church. But is it a church established by Jesus Christ, or is it a church established by Nimrod and Caesar, by the Cains of this world? It is not what it should be, or we would be what we should be. We would be a peculiar people that live by pure religion, by faith, hope, and charity, by the perfect law of liberty. We have a choice. to turn around and move in the direction of living by faith, by loving one another, by caring for one another in the ways of the early church. Or we can live by force, by greed, by avarice, by controlling our neighbors through the institutions we create for ourselves. We have sat and ate with rulers with great appetite. He has served us deceitful dainties, but we are still a surety for debt. If we are to be free, we must set others free from our own wantonness. We must return to Christ. We must return to the ways of Abraham and Moses. We must return to the ways that love our neighbor as much as ourselves. We must gather together in small, intimate congregations that are linked together on these same principles. This is the journey we are all on. We are either moving according to Nimrod to now, or we're moving according to Shem and Abraham and Moses and Christ to now. If we have not yet repented, we need to turn around. If we do not know a church that knows the message of the true gospel of the kingdom, we need to find one. We need to come together and become that church, His church, according to His ways. We must set aside the rituals and the pomp and the ceremony and become true Minutemen for Christ by becoming true Minutemen for one another. To be there for one another. We do not need these other institutions. We cannot give them up instantly. It's a process. The kingdom of heaven is more a journey. That's why Christ began with seek first that kingdom of heaven and the righteousness of God, and all else will be provided to us.